Well, thank you so much for being here. And we'll just start talking and then
My pleasure.
Yeah. So we're here today with Juliann Larimer, President and CEO of Peak-Ryzex. I got that right. Okay, good. And also an MBA from Kellogg, which is my alma mater. I went there
That's
for
right.
undergrad. Yeah,
Yes.
amazing. And we know each other from our Motorola days, which
We
we'll talk about a
do.
little bit.
Yep.
But why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're up to today?
All right. So just about 2 years ago, I joined the Peak-Ryzex team as the president and CEO.
Amazing.
My predecessor was running 2 different companies and came to realize that we needed a full-time dedicated leader of this business. And Peak is a solutions provider that helps companies. We're at the intersection of improving the customer experience and the operational efficiency of our customers.
Okay.
So we do that in North America and in the UK. And we like to say that we help companies with their digitally connected supply chain and mobile workforce.
Oh, nice.
And we do that through an innovative set of problem solvers. Part of, everything we do is very service-centric and service-based.
Can you give us an example of a use case?
I would love to.
Yeah.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I've got several.
Okay, good.
One that comes to mind in terms of improving customer experience, that intersection of customer experience and operational efficiency, is some work that we're doing for one of the top retailers in the UK that's also a top global brand retailer.
Okay.
And they came to us, and we have a proprietary e-commerce software package, and we're helping them transform some of their operations that's giving their store staff the opportunity to spend more time with customers. So as a result of the software application that we've deployed for them, in inventory markdowns, they've seen a 70%
Oh, wow.
improvement in the time that it takes. They do 70% less time. And they're also a high-end retailer that has fresh food. So think about exotic cheeses or meats, and that receiving of those fresh perishables, as you can imagine, is extremely important in terms of creating a really good customer experience. And they've been able to decrease the amount of time to actually receive those goods, which means they can turn around and more quickly get those goods out on the shelf in the hands of their customers.
Okay.
And there's about a 60% improvement in time as a result of the software and the services that we've put in place for them.
Neat. So a lot of people don't know, but when we were at Motorola, they had an enterprise business and worked on store operations and things like that.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm in this exact same space.
Yeah, interesting.
The enterprise space, and solving similar problems to like what we did at Motorola.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us about your career from, I always like to hear the whole origin story and journey from like college on. What did you think you want to do? Where did you think you'd end up? And
Yep. So as a liberal arts major, I said I'll be really good at cocktail parties.
yeah.
But I knew that I wanted to go into business. So I started, my first job out of college was one that I earned through the campus recruiting office.
Okay.
And there was a company called Bridgestone Software, Japanese company. This is Nashville, Tennessee, late 1980s. Japan's taking over the world. And they came to Vanderbilt, and they were looking for 6 fresh outs to put through a management training program. I raised my hand. Part of the appeal to me was that it included time living and working in Japan. And
neat.
I thought that would be really awesome.
Yeah.
So I was one of 6 people that were selected for this program, and that's really what got me into technology. So I was, even though with a liberal arts background, they spent a ton of time invested in the 6 of us, teaching us about technology. And we learned everything from COBOL programming to systems design to how to think about being a business analyst. And
what an opportunity. What an
It
amazing.
was really incredible. It was like being paid to be on a field trip.
Yeah. And were you all from different backgrounds, the 6 of you? Or
there were 5 of us from the same university. And then when we talk about this maybe later in the conversation, I think I was the only woman that applied from Vanderbilt.
Oh, interesting.
And so they didn't want me to go over there as the only woman. So they recruited another woman from a different university.
Okay.
So there were 2 women and 4 men.
And why do you think you're the only woman that applied?
It's a great
Yeah.
question.
I mean, not that you would know what everybody else was thinking, but, you know,
I
just a
think
guess.
If you rewind the clock to that time period, there were so many things. The world was much bigger. So there was no internet. There were no cell phones. And moving from the United States over to Asia was huge.
Yeah.
And
what did your family think?
they were excited but nervous
Yeah.
and very super proud. I would say that was my parents' generation. The generation above actually had mixed feelings because many of them were at our age during World War II.
Yeah.
So there was still some political tension or a bias, and certainly, going thousands of miles away with very little way to, it was you write a letter.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Or you have
which like we can't even imagine today, but
No, you think about that. And I would talk to my parents for like 10 minutes on a Sunday night.
And it'd cost like $400.
Right, okay. Anything else? We're out of money.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So I think it was just, it was far away and it was very unknown. And at that time, maybe it felt very risky.
Yeah. And you were like, yes, let's do it.
I was absolutely, yes, let's do it. And my parents, I think to make them feel better, bought me a video camera and said, videotape things and send it back. And,
smart.
And think
I
about
like that,
video cameras back in that day. They were massive.
Yeah.
Not like the phone that we're using right here today. So I'm traipsing around Japan with this big video camera, trying to make sure that my parents knew that I was going to be safe.
Yeah.
It was a great experience.
And how long did you live in Japan for?
Only 4 months.
Okay.
The original plan was for a year.
Okay.
But once we got over there, the training, they said, well, we think you can achieve all the business objectives that we want you to achieve in 4 months. It was really the inculcation of the culture, the methods, understanding the broader Bridgestone story, and getting some of that technical training.
Okay.
Yep.
Did you pick up the language at all? Or?
A little bit.
Okay.
We spent about half of our time every day doing language.
Oh, wow.
Yes, but it's a very complicated.
It's like thousands of characters.
Very different, yes.
And so the things that you learned there, have those helped you along in your career, especially around like global culture and things like that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I feel very fortunate that was where I started my career.
I actually didn't know that about you. So I'm learning. I love this.
Yes. There were a couple things. I think that the Asian style of management's very different.
Yeah.
It's more subtle in some ways. There's more ritual and tradition, I think, that's explicit in an organization. And so I had a chance to appreciate and experience that. The other thing that was interesting was watching. There were 6 of us, as I mentioned earlier. When we came back, it was a vague next step.
Yeah.
And so watching how my peers and I operated in that uncertainty.
Yeah.
And there were some people that were super aggressive, even at the expense of the others in the group to try to advocate for themselves. Sort of a winner take all.
Yeah.
And then there were some people that were more passive, and there was a lot of uncertainty. And I think that was a really interesting lesson because it was, as I've progressed in my career, managing uncertainty and then figuring out how you react to uncertainty. That was a great experiment, if you will, to just watch the behavior of 6 people, very different, in an uncertain situation, how people responded. And I was very fortunate. I was less aggressive, but certainly professional. And I ended up with the role being the assistant to the president of Bridgestone Japan. Wow. So I ended up with a great role, but it was an interesting time to watch that dynamic.
Yeah.
And it was a really great time to watch the culture of working in a Japanese company. And then also I got a lot of technical experience that since I've been in B2B technology companies my whole career, it gave me a really good foundation on which to build, kind of that basic technology understanding and then from which to build.
Yeah, so 2 interesting points there. So I bet the aggressive nature did not bode well, given the Japanese culture. Like you said, it's more subtle. And
that's right.
Yeah. And then the ambiguity. So I purposely give my undergrad students, and I feel like it's a form of torture, ambiguous assignments because they sometimes freak out.
Yep.
Or if I give it to them in the syllabus, they go line by line and do it
Yes.
exactly as I say, like in a literal way.
Yeah.
And that's not going to serve them well when they get to the workforce. So.
No, and you know this,
Yeah.
Karen. There's so much we deal with ambiguity
All the time.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. So
So-
being in that environment early on was a really good experience.
Yeah. So assistant to the Japanese president
Yep.
of British. Okay. And then what?
So from there, I wanted to get closer to where the money's made.
Okay.
I like being in the business of the business.
Yeah.
So I moved into a regional marketing role.
Okay.
And I was, that was my first experience working with channels. So different types of routes to market with
Okay.
a manufacturer. So I was a channel marketing coordinator for the tire division of Bridgestone, which is
Okay.
what most people in the U.S.
I
think
didn't know
of
if it was the
Bridgestone.
same thing. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, so Bridgestone is a huge conglomerate.
Yeah.
And in Japan, they make many things that we don't necessarily see here
Yeah.
in the U.S. market. And so tires is their biggest branded product in North America. So I switched over to that division, moved into a regional office as a marketing coordinator. I worked with the general manager and all the salespeople. I loved
Yeah.
it. My next role was to go into sales. And so I had a great mentor and sponsor in the regional VP. And
Male or female? He? Okay.
yes, sing.
Yeah.
Sing Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Great guy. And he said, Juliann, great. We'll send you out with our best sales rep and you can do a job shadow. And I was so excited. And
Yeah.
we went out and part of the role as the sales rep was to go into your different tire resale stores and inventory the product.
Okay.
So you could help them figure out what they were low on
Yeah,
and what
very
they needed to
hands-on.
order.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I'm very excited. I'm in my two-piece suit,
Yeah.
my skirt and my jacket, and we get to the first place and Tony says, okay, let's go inventory the tires. Well, what you may not notice at a typical tire store is a lot of the inventory is kept above the bays where they do the work.
Oh, yeah.
And what's above the bays where they do the work is that like subway grid.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
So I got up there to count
You're like,
the tires.
I am not dressed right. Yeah.
I looked down and I said, oh boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to be in sales, but I'm not sure I want to sell tires because I really like wearing skirts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I had an opportunity to pivot and stay in technology and move to, at the time, Anderson Consulting. Today, we know it as Accenture.
Yeah.
And I started there as a technical writer. So again, building on some of the technical skills
Yeah.
that I was able to obtain during my time at Bridgestone, Anderson had a software division,
Okay.
and I was in their documentation and training team.
Okay.
So I wrote manuals and I taught classes, and similar story, wanted to get closer to the customer. So I moved over to the help desk and I
Okay.
took help desk calls. And then I moved into the field organization as a systems engineer. And I went out and did proofs of concepts and conference room pilots that were anywhere from 1 week to 1 month, where we would just camp out in a customer's conference room.
Okay.
And we would design a mock version of a system that we were trying to sell them.
Okay.
And so I did that for a few years and loved what I was doing, and then was recruited to a small software company out of Cambridge, Massachusetts called Lotus Development
Okay.
to help drive their channel partner adoption of Lotus Notes. So it was a really new technology at
Yeah.
the time, this online collaboration. And for where we are now, we just take
Yeah.
it for granted, but it was a very new and emerging type of technology coming from very structured applications to a way that you could create dynamic workflows. So I ended up moving over to Lotus. 10 days later, we were hostily acquired by IBM, which was very exciting.
Yeah.
And it was a great lesson in culture.
Yeah.
So we had two very different cultures, and a very strong Lotus culture around diversity and independence and
Smaller, obviously.
much
yeah.
smaller. And then being acquired at the time by a company like IBM,
Yeah.
big, that you think of at the time, people in suits and ties and
Yeah.
very structured, and
Yeah.
coming from an organization where, one of the operating mantras was take risks, have fun.
Oh gosh,
It
yeah.
was very different. So it was a great time to watch that unfold.
Yeah, and did IBM come in and want to take over Lotus, or did they kind of leave it in its own piece? Or
For the most part, they left it.
Okay.
And at least for the time that I was there, I was only there for a few years after
Okay.
the acquisition. But part of why I wanted to go to Lotus was because I wanted to go back to school and get my MBA.
Okay.
And at Accenture, with the client
Yeah,
demands
and
and
hours
travel
and- yeah.
schedule, there wasn't a way to do that without resigning. And I loved the industry that I was in, so I knew that I really wanted to go back to school part-time,
Yeah.
not because I was looking to make a major pivot from a career perspective, but more because I wanted to, put more tools in my toolbox
Sure.
and have the opportunity to really formally learn and combine that with what I was learning just through my normal career path.
Yeah. Well, good thing you had that uncertainty background going into a company that's then acquired 10 days later. And there was no
Yes.
indication when you started that was on the horizon? Or
Nope.
Oh, boy.
Nope.
So then you become an IBM employee.
So I became part of the IBM software group.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's a
and-
good place to be. That's
And
not
that was a great
yeah.
that was a great experience. I was able to go to school part-time, and I had a lot of different roles at IBM. So I started out as a systems engineer working with IBM's channel partners,
Okay.
and then I raised my hand and became actually the channel manager. So working directly with those channel partners more on the business side than the technical side. Then I became a territory account manager. So I had a patch of dirt,
Yeah.
a bunch of zip codes, and customers that were existing and customers that I needed to cold call. And then the last role before I left, I worked in sales operations
Okay.
on the deal desk. So I was structuring really complex deals. And it was a great experience because I had a chance to work with the product team, the marketing team, the finance team, the legal team. It was a really great cross-sectional set of problem solving with really fun, big customers and
Yeah.
really complex, hairy deals.
So what was driving all the moves? Because if you look in retrospect, it almost
Mhm.
looks like I knew I wanted to be a president and CEO, and I was purposely doing all these different things. Was that on your mind, or what were you thinking? Were you just chasing what you were passionate about, or
I would describe myself as a lifelong learner.
okay,
And
same,
so
yeah,
one of the things that I always want to be learning and trying new things.
Yeah.
And I felt that if I wanted to be a leader of a team or lead a sales organization, then I needed to have carried a bag, which
Yeah.
is why I went into territory sales. That's end user sales. It's very different than channel sales. I liked working on the deal desk because that was working with enterprise customers. So while I wasn't an enterprise sales rep, that was a proxy for that type of experience because I was working side by side with our enterprise reps, structuring these really complicated deals.
Yeah.
And so it was somewhat by design, but also I think I like, hey, I want to try that. I want to see if I
Yeah.
can master that. Can I be good at that? And what do I do next?
Is it
So,
like 2 to 3 years in a row, or
sort of?
Yeah, I know my husband's always
Yeah.
like, "Oh no," like you start to get antsy, and yeah,
That is so funny. We
Yeah.
have that same conversation
Yeah.
at our house. My husband said, "You've mastered it. Why don't you just enjoy it?"
yeah. I wish I could.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's right.
Yeah, it's an affliction, but
It is an affliction.
And so, technology, say high tech sales,
Mhm.
male dominated. I'm assuming.
Lotus was very diverse.
Okay.
So
I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Lotus was absolutely. It was one of the early companies that did same-sex benefits.
Oh, interesting.
Very unusual
early.
at the time.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
unusual at the time. Very active in the communities around social issues and programs, and so super diverse and very much embraced the diversity across every dimension.
Okay.
Everyone had to go through diversity training. It was mandatory. It was 4 days out of the
Wow.
field.
That is
It
a
was-
commitment, to be honest.
And
Yeah.
it was sponsored by the most senior person in our office. So it was absolutely the fabric of the culture was around diversity, inclusion, and embracing, and a strong belief that being different made us better.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and they performed well. Obviously, they were acquired by IBM, so
Yep.
it actually pays to have diversity and
Yes,
focus
yes.
on that. So you're at IBM then for a few years,
Yes. And then my husband and I were starting a family, and I was 4.5 months pregnant with twins.
Oh, wow.
And you asked the question earlier about, did IBM let Lotus run on its own? And for a long period of time they did. And then the role that I was in, that deals desk role, basically they said, we can cover it with legacy back office IBM support.
Okay.
So our entire department was eliminated.
Oh, wow.
I had a chance and several opportunities to stay.
Sure.
But given my personal situation, I decided that it was probably the right time to step back.
Okay.
And so I stepped back. Our twin daughters were born a little bit ahead of schedule, which
on their own schedule. Yeah.
on their own schedule. And so it gave me the opportunity to be home and be present at a time when there was a lot of uncertainty in that part of our lives. So I was home for 2 years.
Okay.
Working with our family and
with twins, I would think you'd have one of you has to stay home. Yeah, I couldn't even imagine. We barely made it through one, so
I understand that. Yep.
Yeah, and then so you decide to go back to work.
So then I decided to go back to work. Yep, and this was right after the .com bust.
Okay,
this is a really kooky time in terms of like all the hot technology jobs had dried up. So. It was after Y2K, so that had kind of slowed things down. And then the
world
whole
did not end at
e-commerce,
Y2K.
The internet bubble had collapsed. So I was through the Kellogg network. I found out about a position at a company headquartered in a suburb of Chicago, Zebra Technologies.
Okay.
And they were looking for a sales training manager. I'd never been a sales training manager, but I'd been through a lot of sales training.
Yeah.
So I applied for the role, and my boss was this amazing woman who was working part-time, which was very unusual.
Yeah.
She was looking for her successor, which was awesome, to be able to step into a role where you felt like you knew what the next step was going to be.
Wait, is this the woman with the red hair?
No.
Okay.
That's the woman from Lotus.
Okay.
She asked Greta.
Okay.
Yes. Talking about diversity. Yes. I mean, I loved, yes.
So the reason I remember that is because you did two pivotal things that actually affected my career, and you probably don't know it, and I'm probably going to embarrass you. But when we were at Motorola Solutions, we had a kind of a women's business network.
We did,
And
yes.
you came in and spoke.
Yes.
And you were like the amazing, beautiful female executive that everybody wanted to be and be around. And you got up and you spoke about your career, and you spoke about this woman with red hair,
Greta.
red, short, spiky hair.
Greta, yes.
And your message was essentially you can be yourself and be successful.
That's right. And that's who I worked with the closest at Lotus.
Yeah. And up until then, I always felt like I had to fit a mold or dress a certain way or look a certain way or talk a certain way. And from that point on, I was like, F it, I'm going to be myself.
Yes.
And it's amazing how your opportunities and performance and things like that change when you're more authentically yourself. So
true.
It was awesome.
So true.
And I love that message.
Yes.
And I love her, and I don't even know her.
Oh my gosh. And you would love her if you did know her. She is an amazing, amazing woman. Even now, I still feel so blessed that I had the chance to be around her greatness. I mean, she just was so confident, and she was her own person, and that her customers loved her coworkers loved her.
Yeah.
And, there's people that you would think would be, in this day and age of all the internet trolls, that would just be so rude and disparaging. But, Greta just would never let any of that bother her.
Yeah. I love that.
She just was. Yeah. So this is a woman named Kathy.
Okay.
And her boss was a gentleman from Hewlett-Packard, and they were looking to try to transform Zebra. Zebra had been a very product-centric organization, and they were trying to move more towards solution selling, solution-centric. And so my background of having worked at IBM, gone through a lot of formal solution sales training, understanding how to package different things together. So they took a risk on me, even though I had never been a sales trainer, but I did the first webcast in the history of the company.
Oh my gosh.
I was pretty proud of that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yep. And someone said, thank you for bringing us forward 50 years.
Yeah.
I got a really
In
nice
one webcast. Yeah.
I got a really nice email after the first webcast and doing that. So I came into that role and knew I had a ton to learn. And that was a really amazing time for me. It was my first time being a formal leader.
Okay. So you had direct reports?
One.
Okay.
Yes.
That's okay. Dip the toe in the water.
One,
Yeah.
and then I think it grew to 3. And then when Kathy actually did end up moving out of the area with her family, I was able, she did select me as her replacement, and then my team got bigger.
Yeah.
But she was a great mentor for a first-time manager. And I had some really good partners in HR that were also extremely helpful in challenging my thinking and helping me understand what good looks like. And also, in that time frame, I learned a lot about what happens when you don't make the right choice. So
interesting.
You bring people on board and you both firmly believe that it's a good fit.
Yeah.
And one of my mentors once said, Juliann, if you get it right 50% of the time, you're doing better than most people.
Yeah.
It's that 50% of the time that you're wrong. What you do about it is what separates, great leaders from just mediocre leaders.
And so do you mean just hiring people in selection and then kind of hire
and
and fire fast? Or
that's right.
Yeah.
And just being okay with, gosh, I brought this person on. I thought they were a rock star. And all of a sudden, things aren't really happening the way that we both thought they would. And you've put a lot of yourself into that process and that person. And you feel a connection and an obligation, and you very much want them to be successful. And for whatever reason, it's not the right match.
Yeah.
And having the courage to be able to, follow through on what ultimately is helping them find the right place.
Because they might be in pain too if it's not happening.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And then all the people around that person that can see that they're underperforming or not a good fit. So I had really good people early on in my career that held me accountable and helped me hold myself accountable around that. And I think that's been one of the big differentiators when people know me and how I operate. I feel very strongly about building good teams and helping people land in places where they belong.
Yeah. So how would you handle a situation like that? Is it a series of conversations, uncomfortable conversations? Or
That's exactly right.
Yeah. And I do think some leaders shy away from having those conversations.
And there's 2 sets of conversations. There's one with the employee, and then there's one you have with yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you walk away from having gotten it wrong and you don't take the time to hold up the mirror and say, what did I do or didn't do to contribute to this situation? What could I have done better? Are there different questions I could have asked? Are there different ways I could have supported that person in the organization once they were here?
Did you change then the way you selected folks or the way you brought them up?
Absolutely. We just went through a situation like that where I work now, where we had a person that seemed like a good fit, and that didn't end up being the case. And it was a very, very much of an introspection for me.
Sure.
Yeah. So that was a good time period in a small team with a great boss who was super patient and allowed me to experiment and sort of build that muscle early on in your career. It's a really hard muscle to build.
The people management
the
side.
further along you go.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier to just avoid it.
Yeah. So when you went from individual contributor to managing one person, what was that leap kind of like? Because that is an interesting, because I did that actually at Motorola. I was on the team, and then I started leading the team of 6 or 7 people, which made it doubly awkward because you were part of the
you
team.
Were a peer and now you're in charge.
And I learned along the way, did everything possible wrong, banged my head against the wall. So what was that leap like for you?
Luckily with one direct
Yeah, it's more like partnership.
I think
and,
it was a little bit easier. It was when I got promoted to went from manager to director.
Yeah.
Then I had managers on my team. I had a bigger team. And I think the key there was navigating, when are you beside someone? When are you behind them? And when are you in front of them as a leader?
Yeah, interesting.
And then from a style perspective,
that was my next question, your leadership style.
was figuring out how do they like to be led, or how do they like to partner with their boss? And then, managing what that looks like.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that as a leader, my job is to enable and create value for the people on my team, right? If I can knock down obstacles or help things go faster or better, my job is to help enable the people that are smarter than me on my team be their best at work. And so it was about figuring that out. And everybody's not the same. Getting the right mix of people on a team is also super important, that chemistry. And then how do you take very different backgrounds and styles and approaches and build that into a really strong team, use that diversity so that it's not, they're not tearing each other apart, but they're building each other up.
Yeah. And I would say the thing I've learned there is that it takes time. You have to be somewhat patient.
You do. That's a great point.
Which I don't necessarily love, but.
And you observe and you gut check, and you also, find ways to triangulate the things that you get a hypothesis or a feeling in your stomach, and you're like,
spidey sense.
Yes, I need to go kind of dig in a little bit on that.
Yeah. Okay, so you're at Zebra for a little bit, sales trainer.
Yep,
director
for
level.
A little. Did that for about 6 months. Then I got promoted to the director of channel strategy and operations, or something like that. I don't remember the exact title, but we were rolling out a global channel program, brand new program for Zebra. It was such an exciting time. It was a big, big responsibility. We were changing almost everything. And we had to get the program, we had to take it all the way up to the executive leadership team. It needed to be signed off by the CEO and the CFO and all of the product leaders. So it's a huge amount of change management. And at the time, it was a very interesting time in the industry, because Zebra had gone to market primarily through value-added resellers or solution providers like Peak-Ryzex. That was my first introduction to Peak, was 20 years ago when
gosh. Serendipitous. Yeah.
That's right. They were one of Zebra's largest partners, still are today.
Which Zebra's in most stores, right? Is that?
Yep.
Stores. That's where people would know them.
They would. Lots of places. Rental car companies. Yes.
Okay.
They're scanners, they're mobile computers. So when you get a package delivered from FedEx, that's a Zebra product. They're used in some of the largest brand names that you would know today, both in store and in the back operations, transportation and logistics, healthcare.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And so they weren't direct to market.
So they were primarily through partners. And what had happened was the internet had popped up, and these very smart entrepreneurs had figured out how to take Zebra product and put it on a website and mark it up, 2 or 3 points.
Yeah.
And so it was creating a lot of channel conflict. And what you had were value-added resellers that had a high degree of investment in field sales, technical expertise. They would go out and do all the pre-sales work with the customer, and then the customer would go out
buy it themselves
and say, look, I can get it on the web for 10 cents. And it was from a company that had only really invested in putting up a web storefront. So part of what we were solving for with our channel program was to create the right, what we call swim lanes in channel management. We were trying to create the right clarity around the different channels and the value that those channels were providing for Zebra. We saw the online channel as very important.
Yeah.
Not one that we wanted to shut down, but one that we wanted to enable and still allow the value-added players to be able to be loyal to the Zebra brand and be profitable when they were representing the Zebra brand.
Yeah. And would you say people embraced the rise of the internet at the time, which I know sounds so weird saying because it's obviously
Yes,
pervasive
I
today,
understand
but
the question.
yeah.
The short answer is no. I think to some degree, the customers loved it because it created a lot more transparency,
Yeah.
which is a great thing. Big proponent of that. I would say companies that were slow to respond
Are probably not around
probably
today.
didn't like
Yeah.
it, right? And so would say it was a mixed, sort of a love-hate. It's an efficient channel, which is great.
Yeah.
But in some cases, the value add is different than the value add from a direct channel.
Yeah.
For a high-touch sales organization, as an example, like the enterprise sales team at Motorola.
Yeah.
High touch, and with that, there's a set of investments that's required in order to make that work.
Okay. So Zebra.
Yep. So I helped build and roll out the global channel program at Zebra.
Amazing. Yeah.
And it was a lot of change management. And
Yeah.
I can very clearly remember our final presentation to the executive staff. And one of the things that we were recommending, which was very controversial, was a price increase in our most profitable, highest ASP product line. And I can so clearly remember the CEO at the time looking over his half glasses at me and saying, "Are you sure we're not going to lose market share if we raise our prices on our most profitable product line?" And we had done a lot of work. We had brought in some outside economists. We had done some price sensitivity work in terms of, were people more brand loyal or channel loyal, and knowing that you can derive a pricing strategy around having that type of insight from your customer.
Yeah.
And I just remember looking him straight in the eye and saying, "I'm confident." And I'm not sure I was, but that had to be the answer. And it turned out beautifully. I mean, it
no qualifiers,
we hit and exceeded the business objectives, and more than that, the model that we built, the distributors in the business would tell other manufacturers, "Oh, Zebra's got the best channel program. Go talk to Juliann and her team.
Oh.
They've got it figured out." So we had spent 2 years and a lot of conversations, a lot of change management went into that program, but it won a lot of awards. It hit the business objectives. We didn't lose share. Zebra today continues to be the market share leader in those categories. So it was a really exciting time.
And so did that ultimately bring them to the solutions and services provider that they wanted to be from the hardware provider? Or was that still?
It was still part of the journey.
Okay.
It was part of the journey.
It took IBM like 7 years, right? Or something like that?
Yeah, that's right. So I would say part of that journey was the acquisition of the enterprise business from Motorola.
Yeah, which was fascinating to live through.
Oh my, exactly. That's exactly right. So at the time, it was.
And I'm going to suit you closer.
Because I'm falling off.
Okay. We want to see you.
At the time, we were trying to change the conversation about our products, less about speeds and feeds, and more about use cases. So that parlayed me into. I had several marketing roles at Zebra as well during my tenure there the first time, and ran the marketing. One of the roles I had was running the marketing organization. And what we tried to do was really turn the conversation sideways. So we would say, okay, here's the portfolio in healthcare, and so we'd have a picture of the floor of a hospital, and then we'd show all the places where the Zebra products could be in use. And the same thing in retail. Like you're talking about, Karen, you could have a shelf edge label application, you could have markdowns. And so just putting what we did in the context and the lens of how our customers think was part of that journey.
Yeah, that's kind of cool though. I like that because then you can go out and do some ethnography and watch people and how they interact with the products.
Yes, and we started to work more closely with market research companies that specialized in those vertical markets and had that domain expertise. And that helped us in 2 dimensions. One was on how do we take what we have today and get the right message out to the right audience, and more importantly, how does this insight from these firms drive innovation?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we designed during my tenure there was a healthcare specific printer that all it did was print wristbands, and the intent was, hey, you could put a wristband a set of wristbands in a legacy printer, but most of the time you don't have IT
to switch it out.
working at in the intake of a hospital or doctor's office. So they built it so that the wristbands were in a cartridge. And it was like a toaster, and you just popped it in. Super easy for
Simpler
anybody.
is better, yeah.
That's exactly right. So if it was a nurse or one of the staff, you didn't have to be an expert in the technology. And so that's an example of how our market focus helped drive some of the innovation at the time.
That's the stuff I love. Finding those
I
cool
know
insights
that.
in the field.
I know that is the stuff you love. Yes.
I do like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Very cool. And so how did you end up at Motorola then? Was that after Zebra or?
Well, there was one stop in between.
Okay.
So my last role before I left Zebra was I was the general manager of the North America sales organization.
Okay.
So I had done a lot of zigging and zagging.
And that's a big role.
In my time there. It was great.
Big organization.
It was it was a big organization, some very big customers. It was the largest region that Zebra had at the time.
Okay.
Still is.
Yeah.
And I was recruited by a company called NCR, and they were going through a transformation, and they appealed to the Juliann loves transformation.
Yeah, change management.
And hard projects that are sticky and messy.
Yeah.
And they said, we need someone to come in and run the North America Channels organization. And the gentleman that recruited me had worked at Cisco, and he had done some of the M&A there and was brilliant, just an amazing thinker from a channel perspective. And so I thought, what an incredible opportunity to really build some domain expertise. Zebra was primarily a channel-centric company, so selling through companies like Peak. That was probably 85% of the revenue. NCR was the exact opposite.
Interesting. Okay.
So it was 80% direct, and the rest was channel. So I was coming into a nascent part of the business that was not well understood, that was not well liked.
And you're like, yes, sign me up.
That's right. And with a lot of people that had grown up in the organization. So it sounded tricky, but could be super rewarding if I could crack the nut. So I raised my hand, and at the time, NCR was a much bigger organization than Zebra as well. So I thought, it was scale, it was a reverse of what I was used to in terms of direct versus channel, and it was an opportunity to learn from one of the best people in the technology channel world at the time. It was a great opportunity. I was sad to leave Zebra, but I really was excited about what I was going to go learn that I thought would be different and complement the skills that I had acquired during my time at Zebra. So I was there for 2 years.
What was the role there?
I was the vice president of North America channels.
Okay.
So I originally had the retail channel, and then they gave me the financial services channel. So those are the people that go out and install ATM machines at credit unions and regional banks.
Okay.
Yep. And I was the only woman on the North America sales leadership team. I was the newest member. A lot of my peers had been with the company since right out of college. It was a very, very strong culture. Yes, and it was very tough. And I knew going in it was going to be tough. And I said, I'll give it 2 years. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, sometimes it's not worth it if the culture is not great or
no, and I couldn't.
Not accepting, I guess.
It was really hard to see what was that next move for me in the company. There was a lot of changes going on at the top, and ultimately my sponsor and mentor left, and then my direct boss, who was the general manager of North America, someone who I really loved working for, he ended up leaving as well. And then I just said, this is a lot of work, and I've got a great team, and I like it, but I felt like I could have a bigger impact somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so that's when I ended up at Motorola.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yay. And that's where we met.
Yes, that's exactly right. And it was a similar situation to the early days at Zebra, where Motorola had made the decision to build an integrated channel program. So after the acquisition of Symbol Technologies, the two channels had run separately. So the legacy Motorola radio channel and the Symbol enterprise
Yeah.
channel. So there was a strategic decision to bring those two things together. And so that work had been underway, but I think the feeling was it was taking too long.
Yeah.
And so they called me and said, we need someone who can just drive the execution of the program. And when we go out into the market and say, who can do that? Your name keeps coming up. So that was how
That's
I
good.
was.
That's kind of the be so good they can't ignore you.
Something
method. I like
that. Yes. So that was a really great opportunity.
Good. And how long were you at Motorola? I was there almost 5 years.
Yeah. So I wanted to say 3.5 maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So the other thing you did at Motorola, the second thing, first was the talk with be yourself and you could be successful.
I love that story, Karen. Thank
you don't understand. I say it all the time. I say it to my students, and I bring up the woman with the red hair who I don't even know. She's
Greta.
Like,
now you know her, Greta.
Yeah. and the second thing you did when you left is you had a luncheon for like 10 to 12
I did.
women
I forgot about that.
And I was so honored to be chosen to go to the lunch. And I think Lynn Wirtz was there as well, who's a good friend of mine.
Yes.
She actually ended up working for me while I was there, and we're still friends today. And you brought us little plants, and you just brought us to lunch, and just were so nice. And so the thing I learned there was you can be warm and kind and be a female leader, and you don't need to be this bitch on wheels and like hardcore. And I don't know, it was just super impactful on the way I looked at leadership and being a woman in business and all of that. So again, you probably didn't even know you were doing that, but that was the effect it had on me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. I completely had forgotten about that lunch. And
Yeah.
I remember the thinking behind it. Motorola was a place where I think being a female leader, it was amplified more than any other place I had worked. And part of it, I think, was Motorola did value diversity and inclusion, and they wanted to invest in it. And sometimes the statements didn't match what you saw walking around the hallway or on the senior team. And so there was a lot more focus around that. And when I left, I just thought, I've had the honor of working with some really amazing people. And in the roles that I was in, I was able to cross a lot of different parts of the company.
Yeah.
And so I thought, how neat to like pull the people that I admire together, and like maybe one new friendship could have come out of that, or at least it was an opportunity to express my gratitude and appreciation to each of you.
It was so cool and classy.
What you guys had helped me, because as we've talked about, it can be really lonely and it can be tough, and just knowing that you've got people out there that have your back, or that will absolutely drop everything and take a coffee while you vent and
or do a podcast.
That too. It's so important.
Yeah, no, it was very cool, and I still remember to this day. So you talked a lot about sponsorships, and so I want to mention that a little bit, because I do feel like if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right?
Yeah.
I use a cliche. I've turned into my mother. I speak in cliches. But you need to have somebody that's advocating for you kind of behind the scenes. And so how have you been able to get those?
Sometimes by accident. And I think as I matured in my career, I recognized the importance, and then more deliberately.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I talk about a lot when I am invited to share my wisdom, is a lot of people say, oh, I need a mentor.
Yeah.
And I say, you do, but you really need a sponsor.
Yeah.
And when I look back at those points in my career where I was given that opportunity, and probably for you, my last however many jobs are things I'd never done before.
Yeah.
So essentially, someone was taking a risk on my ability to do whatever that was, because I didn't have a track record of having done that before.
Yeah.
So that only happens if you've got the right network of people around you that are advocating on your behalf. So I think I first recognized it when I was at Zebra and we were driving that huge change program.
Yeah.
And there was a gentleman there in the product organization who was very influential. And some of the coaching I got was, if you want this program to be successful, you're going to have to make sure that this person is on board.
Sure.
So A, he runs one of the biggest parts of the business, and B, he is the consigliere to the CEO.
Yeah.
So I had some coaching of, take him out to lunch and make sure that you're spending extra time. And as an output of that, actually we became good friends in terms of
Nice.
he decided to be my sponsor. I didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah.
But absolutely, he was helping to create the lane for that next role inside of Zebra.
Yeah.
And part of my ability to move quickly was because of his sponsorship. And I think I generally didn't let him down.
Yeah.
So
That helps.
you need a sponsor, but you also have to be
perform.
able to make sure that you can deliver the outcome that they're asking you to do. And then in other places that I've worked, I think it's been, I've looked around and said, do I feel like I have one?
Yeah.
And not because there was any particular next role, but just because I think it's important to figure out, where does your advocacy come from?
Yeah.
If it's not from you. And that's great if you have people on your team that will be your advocate, but you really need someone, a peer or above,
Yeah.
to be able to play that role as a sponsor.
So then when you go into the executive role, it's even a different learning, and I'm still learning. So I had the learning curve of individual contributor to manager, then manager of manager,
Yep.
and then leading a function. And I don't know if you experienced this, but I almost felt like the other executives were after me then, like in a way. It wasn't, and maybe that was the culture of the organization or whatever, but it didn't feel like we were working together to achieve the mission. And it was just kind of new territory for me.
I've definitely been in situations
Yeah.
like that. In some cases, it's more situational. It may be a time when you really think the right way for the company to go is this. And
Yeah.
somebody in a different area, one of your peers, thinks
Totally.
it's something else. Sometimes it feels a little more personal.
Yeah.
I
I try not to think it's, but yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's, financial or CFO versus marketing versus sales. There's always kind of that tug of war.
Yeah,
there.
that's right. And I think the way that people try to get their point across sometimes creates that friction. So
Yeah.
I was in a situation where I was responsible for the channel program. One of the product leaders was unhappy with the changes that we were doing, and rather than come to me directly, which would have been the probably right
Yeah.
and courageous thing to do, he decided in a quarterly business review to put up a survey results that he went on his own
Oh, geez.
and say like, this channel program's terrible. And the first time I was seeing it was
Oh
the
my
first
gosh.
time that our shared boss was seeing it. And that was just a really cheap shot, I thought.
Yeah. And it's an ambush, really.
Yep, that's
Yep.
right. And so I actually made an appointment afterwards to go talk to him about it. And I had done all my homework, and I said, I'd like to make sure this doesn't happen again. Like, we have a shared objective, which is to
Yeah.
make sure that we grow your business, and our channel strategy should be enabling that. And if you're unhappy, I would like you to let me know. And
Yeah.
it was a great opportunity, I think, for him to say, just say, I appreciate it, I agree. And nope, he just lied.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it was really helpful because at that moment,
Then you kind of know who you're
then-
dealing with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then you're just more prepared.
You're much more diplomatic than I would have been. I'm not sure I would have been able to contain myself. So this happened to me.
Oh, but knowledge is power.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? So
So
you're
this,
just like nodding and smiling
yeah,
and going,
plotting.
like, okay, now I know the game we're playing.
Yeah, no, that's good. This similar situation happened to me where I was tasked, my team, with developing the strategy. We get on a call. This other team decided to develop a strategy, and they presented their strategy before my team presented their strategy.
Oh my gosh.
And so my reaction, I called the guy a snake on the call. I'm like, you're a snake. Why would you do that? You weren't tasked to do the strategy of my team. So probably not the best answer, but the best response. So don't listen to me. Listen to
I
Juliann.
don't think there's a right or wrong way.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's about your style. It's
Yeah.
about the situation. In some cases, going straight at someone like that absolutely makes sense. And if you
Yeah.
think about the question you asked at the very beginning about working for a Japanese company,
Yeah.
one of the things that I did religiously when I lived in Japan was Tai Chi.
Oh, interesting.
And if you study the philosophy behind Tai Chi, it's taking energy and using energy to create power. And one of the things they talk about is, rather than, if we were going to fight, rather than me like running up and pushing against you,
Yeah.
I would put my hand out and grab you and use your energy and make it mine to give myself more power.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
And so sometimes I think, like in that particular situation for me, I said, oh, this is chi, right? Like I'm taking the power because you've lied, but I'll never tell you I know you lied. And now I've grabbed your energy and it's my power. So I think in some cases, the right approach is to go right at someone. And then there are a lot of other cases where I feel like it's a chi moment where
I know, I would love that.
I try to grab the energy and say there's an energy here that I can turn into my power.
Yeah, no, and I think business is a game to some degree, and you need to have your steps ahead of people and think about your own strategy. So I actually love that approach. I've read Sun Tzu, Art of War, and all of those things. And not that it's war, but you do have to think about it in those ways. And if I do this, what's going to happen? And then think a couple steps ahead of people.
Yeah. And every situation is different because the people are different and you can get to the same outcome 2 different ways.
Yeah. And I wasn't proud of the snake moment, but I just couldn't, I couldn't help it. Anyway.
How did he respond to that?
He didn't have much to say and then sort of back down. So I suppose it worked, but then I wasn't there very long after that. So don't listen to me. Absolutely do not listen to me. Oh my gosh. Okay, so then you're at Motorola and then you end up back at Zebra, yeah?
Okay. That's right.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Nice.
So I'm super fortunate. I got called into my boss's office after the announcement.
Yeah, did you go with
Well, this is an interesting story.
divestiture?
So I got called in and my boss said, so Juliann, I want to let you know that Zebra's requested that you come with the acquisition, but we have you on the stay list.
Okay.
Because they had moved me into a role where there was some succession planning that was underway. And so I said, oh, okay, well, what happens next?
Yeah.
And he said, well, you can decide.
Which was, for the people listening, was an interesting time to be at Motorola. So they
Very
sold off the
interesting,
enterprise business.
Yep.
And for about a year, people were either E or G, enterprise or government. So they were either going to stay at Motorola government or they were going to be enterprise and go to Zebra. And it took a while to make that split.
Yeah, the timing, because it was a carve out, it wasn't like a clean buy.
It was 4,000 employees, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So it was a very big, and Motorola had spent a lot of time integrating, trying to integrate. So think about the channel program and a lot of the organization. I was in marketing at the time. Our whole back office was highly integrated.
Yeah.
So it was kind of teasing apart the people and the processes and the tools and all that kind of stuff. So it was a very long journey. Once I made the decision that and really what excited me was being able to help with the transition. Like that really energized me. I had a great...
You like the sticky problems.
I do. I was in a great role at a great company with a great boss, with what I felt was a good path, that there would continue to be more opportunities for me. And there was just something in my heart that said, I've worked in both places. I know the people. I know the customers. Like, I want to make this successful. And so I had the opportunity. And so I was released from my obligation at Motorola, and I went over to Zebra about 3.5 months before the deal closed.
Okay.
And I worked on the global go-to-market strategy.
Fun. I like that stuff as well.
Which was really fascinating and a lot of fun, and also a lot of it was very tricky.
Yeah. So my boss at the time, Greg Billings, went over to Zebra.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, and I stayed, and so maybe in hindsight I should have went. But anyway. Okay, so back at Zebra, and then
I was back at Zebra, and I was helping. I was full time on the integration, so I didn't have the music was playing, and the seats were like slowly getting pulled away in the musical chairs, and
that's a good analogy, by the way.
But when I agreed to come back, Zebra was wonderful. And they said, well, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And I said, no, I'm not looking for a commitment on a role. I just want to help with the integration. And if there's a place for me when the music stops, then awesome. And if there isn't, I will have learned so much in the process.
For sure. Yeah.
And as long as you just like help me land gracefully, I'll be okay. So that was my going in attitude. And so I was fully focused on the integration. And so as the chairs are slowly getting pulled away from the game, and I'm looking around, and my husband's like, remember, Juliann, you're the primary breadwinner in our family. Like, no, it's good. I got this. And I'm thinking, I don't know what I have, but I got it. And so I got a call like the Wednesday before Thanksgiving from our CEO. And he said, can we have breakfast on Monday? And I said, okay.
Which is never.
This is going to be the meeting of thank you for all your hard work. And, we've offered you some things and you haven't expressed a desire to do those things. So this is where here's your parting gift. So Monday morning after Thanksgiving weekend, I wake up. And
the longest weekend of your life.
That's right. I'm like, oh, what could this be? So I met him for breakfast and he said, would you be interested in becoming the chief marketing officer?
Awesome.
Which was completely unexpected. But I jumped at that chance to be able to do that.
Amazing role,
Huge opportunity at a time when the company was going through a massive transition. We were rebranding. There was so much work that needed to be done in so many different areas from a marketing perspective. So I was in that role for almost a year. And then the general manager of the North America business left Zebra. And that created an opening in the go-to-market organization. So I was approached about, stepping into that role as a backfill.
Okay.
And so it was a very different, I think there were some people that said, why are you doing this? You report to the CEO as the CMO. And now as the general manager of North America, you're getting, you're going down one layer. And I thought, yep, that's right. If you look at the org structure, you're right. There's like a little demotion there. But the business, the size of the responsibility was very different.
Okay.
We were working with some of our most complicated, demanding customers with an amazing opportunity. And more than that, there was a feeling that the North America sales organization was further behind in terms of the cultural transformation. And I love that kind of stuff. And so being able to step into that role and figure out how do we take several hundred people that today, in many cases, hate working with each other and turn that into a high-performing integrated sales organization is something that I love. And I've always loved being where the money's made. And
And you said that early on. I like that.
Being closer to the customer is
always a good place to be.
It's always a good place to be. And the reality is, Karen, you've been in marketing. I think in B2B technology companies, marketing isn't the place where strategy sits, unlike CPG companies. Where if you're a product manager, you've got full, oversight of that complete product life cycle, and you own the strategy and you own everything. In technology companies, my personal experience is marketing is a support system to sales and product. That's just been my experience. And while there's so many awesome things that you do as part of marketing, and there is marketing strategy that's being done, but it's more marketing strategy, not necessarily product strategy or go-to-market. Those sit within the product and sales organization. So I think having a bigger say or voice in the go-to-market strategy was really appealing to me. It was hard to leave a great team.
I'm sure.
A lot of great work that had been done, but I thought I could make a bigger difference in running the North America sales organization.
That's cool. You weren't chasing the title. You were chasing more the challenge.
No, as a matter of fact, people were looking at me sideways.
Like, what is she doing? Right. You're like, I got this all figured out.
Right. Why did you just stop working for the CEO and start working for one of your peers?
That's okay though. And so then that led you to where you're at today.
That's exactly right.
Okay. I love that.
That was a really long answer to one question.
No, that's okay. I love the origin story. And actually one thing I want to go back to is how you were able to navigate and take on different roles. Because I worked with a lot of women, and a lot of times they do get stuck in where they're comfortable and they're afraid to dip their toe, like you said, into a role that they don't have experience in. But that's really the only way you're going to move up.
It is.
That I've seen.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to that conversation we had about having a good sponsor.
Yeah.
Because we will always have a little voice in the back of our head
Totally.
that says you're not ready. And here's the 20 reasons why
Yeah.
you shouldn't do it. It's not the right time. I don't have the right skill set. I can't leave my existing team. I can't tell you the number of women I talk to who truly pause on a great next opportunity because of the obligation they feel to the team that they're working with today. And I love that loyalty, but it's misplaced, I think.
Yeah.
And I said, like, your people would want you to take this job. Like, nobody wants to hold you back.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think having strong people around you that will say, that will squash that voice and those 20 reasons with, play a little bit to the ego or a little bit to your heart or the things that really you're passionate about. You can fix this. You're uniquely qualified to lead this.
Yeah, those skills are transferable.
That's exactly right. And you need to come in and assess the talent. Oh, okay. I've done that in my last 4 jobs. And let me tell you how I've done that and what the outcome was.
Yeah. So when you take on a new team or new company as you are today, what's like one of the first things you do?
I think the theme is listen.
Yeah.
So it's really about getting to know the people in the organization. So when I started at Peak, I tried to do as much of a listening tour as I could. So meet as many people as you can as quickly as you can inside the organization. Meet as many customers and partners and suppliers so you can start to get what's the outside in view of your organization. The people inside the organization will say, here's what we're great at, here's all the things and then you can look outside and say, what do you think about my company? Or what do you think about our company? How are we doing? What do you like? What don't you like? And then assessing your direct team is the other part of it. And I think whenever there's a leader transition, it's very normal that there would be a people transition that next layer down. And some of it is
voluntary or involuntary.
That's right. And some of it may just be like, I have a vision that we want to do X, and the person before me wanted to do Y. So their leadership team was, staffed and skilled to go do Y, and now we want to go do X. And so it's really about listening and learning, and then also figuring out how the money's made. So when you may have an outside-in view of, this is how our company makes money, but really taking the time to go through, step by step through all the financials to say, okay, this is how we get paid, this is how much we get paid, this is how much it costs to run the business, these are the major cost centers. So really also digging in terms of understanding all the levers and where the money gets made, where the money gets spent.
Yeah.
And then also building a relationship with the board, for me, has been extremely important.
Yeah. Nice. And so, sorry, completely lost my train of thought. I had a train of thought there.
No worries.
Oh, this is what I wanted to ask. So it seemed, and I touched on this early on, that the things you have done had brought you to this point to be CEO. But when did you get that?
Oh, there was one. Can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Of course, as I lost my train of thought.
Yeah,
anyway.
sorry. I think the one thing that I did that I forgot to mention, the other thing that's important in those early days is to communicate early and often expectations.
Yes.
And when I talk about expectations, part of it is a little bit of, here's my work style, so people don't have to guess.
Yeah.
I try to say, I'm a voracious reader of all different random things, and so you'll get emails from me with links to interesting articles. That's just part of who I am, and don't worry.
I don't need a book report. Yeah, every time I send that out.
So just a little bit about how I operate, and then the expectations is what I expect of you as part of my team, and then what you should expect from me as your leader. And I think that's a really important conversation to have as early on as you can, because otherwise you're forcing people to connect the dots on what they see or don't see, and that may not be true. So at least if you put a stake in the ground of this is how I lead,
Yeah.
this is what I expect, you've got a place from which you can have that common conversation.
Yeah. Communication. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So that's a really critical piece of that. It's listening and then turning that around and being as transparent as possible.
Yeah.
Wherever you can.
So when did you say to yourself, I want to be CEO?
Such a great question.
And like actually say it out loud to people.
Probably, I'd say maybe in the last 7 to 8 years,
Okay.
maybe 5 even. I don't know that it's been that long. I was laughing that the question is, I grew up, I think I even have a letter from the White House from Jimmy Carter. I wanted to be president of the United States at one point.
Oh, my daughter
early
says
on.
that. She's 14. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was younger than that. But
maybe that's next.
maybe-
I'll run your campaign.
No, we're good. I watched the debate last night.
Oh,
We're
gosh,
good. We're all good. I think I'm exactly where I need
Where
to
the money's
be.
made.
That's right, where the money's made. So I've always loved feeling like I make a difference.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of what motivates me is going
Purpose,
home.
yeah.
Yes, exactly, the purpose. And so as I've been able to take on new and different roles, I think what became clear to me is I'd love to have the opportunity to see how I could operate in this type of role, as a president
Sure.
and or CEO of a company or a division, and really own it from A to Z in terms of the accountability
Yeah.
of the results and driving the culture and strategy of the team. So
You totally got this.
I don't know. Some days I wonder, but I've got a great group of people around me that help make it possible.
Well, awesome. I'm so proud of you and so excited to see the
Thank
role
you.
and
Thank
so
you.
excited to have you on here. So one last question,
you.
because I'm sure you have more important things to do. But what advice would you give to women starting out in their careers that do want to be CEO, but they're just starting out?
Yes. So we've talked a lot about this already.
Yeah.
I think understanding the difference between a mentor and a sponsor
Yep.
and making sure that you've got your personal board. There's
Yes.
a lot of different names for it now, but who are the people that you surround yourself with that are going to help you A, achieve your objectives, B, be really honest with you. Like,
Yeah.
you flubbed that up, or you should have handled that differently, or why don't you think about this? And so kind of challenge you along the way, but also push you and elevate you
Yeah.
when you need that. I think seeking out opportunities, there was just an article in the Wall Street Journal, I want to say like a week and a half ago, that talked about there's more women than ever that are graduating from universities, that are in leadership roles in these top companies, but that funnel to the top job is still so small. And part of it is
So small.
because
4%.
that you've got it. And part of it is because we women want to lead, but sometimes we shy away from
Mm-hmm.
those roles that serve as gateways
Sure.
to the bigger roles.
Yeah.
And to some degree, I would say don't pursue that just because, but if you truly want to be a president or a general manager, you're going to have to put yourself in those types of positions where you're running the business, the P&L, or a big part of the business, not a support function. You'll have to run a business, and so part of that is being willing to take risks.
Yeah.
And saying, okay, I'm not sure I'm totally qualified for this, but I'm going to go for it because I firmly believe that if I start to tumble, I know there'll be enough people that'll catch me, and I'll learn,
Yeah.
and I can internalize that learning and come back, bigger and stronger and faster and better the next time.
Awesome. Well, and your career has been obviously a great example of everything you just said. So we really appreciate you sharing all of that with us. And
thank
we
you.
look forward to seeing what's next for you.
Well, thank you.
All right. Thanks so much.